We are on our way to the vaccination site, no babe?
Yep.
Hello and welcome to Apple Meet Spain. For today's video, I'm going to share with you my COVID vaccination experience. As of the making of this video, it's my second day after my first dose of the Pfizer anti-COVID vaccine. So a few days ago, we received a call that I was scheduled to get my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. In that call, they asked if I was willing to get vaccinated or not. Since I was willing to get vaccinated, they sent me a schedule to the designated area. On the actual schedule of the vaccination, I was surprised with the number of people falling in line in the area. It is because my husband said when it was his turn to get vaccinated, there was nobody there. Although there were quite a number of people outside, you just have to check which line you should take. Your queue is dependent upon the first letter of your surname. I think it just took a couple of minutes for my turn. When it was my turn, a man just took my ID and struck it off the list. After that, he gave me a number and then he told me to go inside the tent. Before going inside the tent, somebody asked us to sanitize our hands and then she took our temperature. Going inside the tent, there was somebody who was telling us where to sit. After sitting down for a couple of minutes, the same person asked us to go inside the cubicle. In this cubicle, they asked us if we have allergies or if we're taking anticoagulant medicines or if we had COVID. In this cubicle, they also confirmed that I'm going to take the Pfizer vaccine. Beforehand, I know that I would take the Pfizer vaccine because that is what they mentioned when they called us for an appointment. After we give our consent, it's now time for the next step, which is to schedule our appointment for the second dose. In the second cubicle, they asked us again about our medical history. For the next step, that is the actual vaccination process, it was quite quick and I felt no pain at all. After the actual vaccination, they asked us to sit down and wait. After waiting a few minutes, we are now allowed to go outside the tent. I think the actual vaccination process just took around 30 minutes for me. Okay, now as for what I felt after the vaccination. Immediately after the vaccination, I didn't feel anything at all. After a few hours, I felt quite sore in my arms, in my upper arms, like here. The feeling was like when you have a very intense or high impact exercise, or you have like lifted a few weights. That was the sore feeling that I had in my arms, and it was a little bit terrible. I felt a little pain or a little bit sore when like putting up my arm like this. Now on its second day, the soreness is not like before, but it's still sore. Like for example, if I lift my arm like this, it's a little bit sore. So now I'm just waiting for another 3 weeks. I think after 3 weeks is my second dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Okay, so as of today, it's my second day of my second dosage of the Pfizer vaccine. So what we did was go to the vaccination venue at the time of our appointment, and from there, we need to line up and get our names crossed before we can go inside the tent. Before going inside the tent, they took our temperature as well as we needed to put hand sanitizer on our hands. During my first time, there were a lot of people waiting to be called for the next step. There was an usher inside the tent telling us where to sit. But for my second dose, there were no people waiting, so I immediately went to the next step. During the next step, they asked us again if we have allergies, if we had COVID, all the necessary checks. And I think it's an informed consent that they're going to give us the second dose of the vaccine. After passing the initial screening, I then went to the next step, which is the actual vaccination itself. The actual vaccination itself is not painful at all. After getting vaccinated on my left arm, I was told to sit down on a specific line. When we sit down on this specific line, they are just waiting to see if there are any side effects of the vaccine. After waiting for 10 to 15 minutes, they will call a specific line to get out of the tent. And that is the end of the vaccination process here in Spain. For my second dosage, I thought I would spend the same amount of time that I did in the first dose. But it was faster this time because there were not a lot of people lining up. I think it took me around 20 minutes maximum for the whole process to end. If I would rate the health department here in Andalusia or in Malaga in general, I would give it 5 stars because of how fast it was. So I'm experiencing a little bit of soreness on this arm where I was vaccinated. But aside from the soreness of the arm, like when you made some exercises, I don't feel anything. I think I felt like for a moment yesterday, I felt a little bit of tingling on my fingers. I don't know if that is a side effect of COVID, but I have experienced it. Also, I have experienced a little bit of a headache, but it was only for a short while, but I cannot attribute it directly to the vaccine because it's quite hot nowadays here in Spain. So maybe it's a combination of other things rather than the vaccine itself. To be honest, I'm not very keen on getting vaccinated, but when I see that it's going to be a requirement, possibly for traveling, it was my incentive to get vaccinated. Also, I think the swab tests are probably more painful than getting the injections for the vaccine. So that concludes my vaccination story. I hope that in the future, our healthcare system in the Philippines will be like of the first world countries. Getting vaccinated is always a choice and you are the only one who can decide for yourself. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please consider doing so. Thanks again for watching and always stay safe!